Mankind must put an end to war. A war will put an end to mankind.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Well, I'm not drunk. I learned everything I got.
Change will not come if we wait for some other person.
Hey, Internet, this is Elliot, and this is Blind Partisan. We are here to talk to Kathy Hinkfuss of District 12. She's a campaigner for the City Council of Green Bay. Thanks for being on, Kathy.
Thank you, Elliot, for inviting me. I'm privileged to be here.
Well, we'll see about that. We'll see. So I'd like to kind of jump right into it. We have a number of things that we've kind of talked with all the other candidates about. The wheel tax. What's your take on the wheel tax?
So first thing, you want to get into taxes.
I mean, I would like to get out of taxes, actually.
Okay.
So if we can get out of taxes, that would be the ideal. Yes.
The wheel tax. I've talked to the constituents and the voters in the 12th district, and the overall consensus is we definitely need to move forward with a wheel tax. Unfortunately, because we've not done planning on our roads over the years, and we don't have a capital planning budget, so we aren't looking out 3, 4, 5 years. I don't think we have an option, and that's the consensus of the voters in my district. And, as to what that wheel tax should be, I think we need to look at what the numbers are going to be, because the whole thing is to alleviate the assessments from the homeowners. And at the same time, making sure that we're not collecting more than we need, because part of my job as a county or city supervisor is to make sure that we're spending taxpayer dollars wisely.
Okay, so we've gone all over the place on this with other people. But one of the things that I keep kind of asking is, why can't we just raise the regular property taxes a little bit, even if that means that because of statutes we have to go to referendum? If these are things we need to do, why can't we just do that?
Well, we could look at that as an option. However, the thing with the wheel tax is everybody that owns a car will pay that wheel tax. So that tax isn't only incumbent on a homeowner, it's incumbent on anybody that drives and registers a vehicle in the
Which
city.
makes it a little bit of a regressive tax, though.
Well, that might be, and I know people aren't fans, and I don't like being nickeled and dimed to death either. That's why I'm advocating for a sunset clause on this. I'm not advocating that we have this for the next 20 years. I'm saying we need it at least for the next 5 to 6 years so we can get moving and get the roads repaved. I'll tell you, driving around in our district, I understand why our residents want to see those roads fixed. We got potholes, we got dips, we got people hitting their head at the top of their car. So,
you said our district. I am in your district now.
yes, that's why I said our district.
Yeah. So I saw that in your material that you mentioned sunset clause.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the thing about a sunset clause is it's sort of like a current day city council putting the chains on a future city council that can just say, we'll just vote to get rid of that. So how can that have teeth?
Okay, at the same time that we look at what that tax is going to be, and right now I think it's proposed at $15. We take a look at how long we need to collect that to resurface the roads, and I'd like to see us coordinate that with the county with that half a sales tax, so we can see what we can be, where we can save some money between the two of us. And then if we can get the roads repaved over the next 6 years, and I don't even know if that's totally feasible, but at the same time, then we put in capital budgeting. We know what's coming up, and we're looking at that. You cannot do capital funding, budgeting year to year. You need to know what you need to replace 5, 10 years out. When you put it in, you know about what the replacement value is, mm-hmm. or when it needs to be replaced. So put it on a calendar with an estimate. And that's all it is an estimate. But future city councils then see what's coming up, because those tax dollars are to go to maintaining our infrastructure.
Right. So back when I was involved with On Broadway, we worked really hard to try to get curbs and sidewalks fixed a little bit, some chopped up pavement fixed, and the big thing was the benches. We had the benches and we had the whole like repainting thing.
Yeah, and they're beautiful down there, by
Yeah,
the way.
yeah, thank you.
They're all different, and
Yeah. And the thing that just struck a chord with me is when we talked to the Public Works people, who with that project were super accommodating. But one thing that Steve Grenier said was that things are based off of complaints. So the repairs are largely based off of complaints, and so we're talking about like the most foot trafficked intersection in the city. I mean, you could argue that maybe near Lambeau Field is, but I think Broadway was holding its own.
oh, absolutely,
right?
and it's getting stronger.
So I'm like, well, you have one complaint, so how many more do you need? And we were able to get some action that way. But the bigger thing is, the things aren't planned, and then there's this assessment that nobody likes, and other towns don't have this assessment. Some have a wheel tax, some don't. And I guess, like, how do you think we can get from here to there now, since we're already behind the 8 ball?
Well, we're behind the 8 ball, and I think the wheel tax is a way to catch up a little bit. But at the same time, we can't be fixing things based on complaint. And I think that comes from leadership, and leadership is part of the council. So as a council, we need to set our expectations higher, because in high traffic areas and areas where you're really trying to revitalize, like downtown on Broadway, that is something that should be looked at every single year to see what improvements need to be made by the city to keep that corridor gorgeous and beautiful. Because the people on Broadway, I am so impressed at their dedication to
and I just wouldn't want to
that
see
area.
I wouldn't want to see all of them get hit with assessments. That doesn't so there's also the moral hazard of okay, so everybody up until the end of 2018 has to pay special assessments, and then nobody does. So like if I had to pay one this year and then somebody else gets the road fixed and they don't have to next year, I don't know how we make that all okay.
We can't please 100% of the people 100% of the time. But if we can please 80%, we're doing well. I do think we have to look at those assessments that were done in 2017. Because if we say as of 2018, we don't have to, at the time we're looking at the contract and what we want to put in place for that wheel tax, I don't know what the answer is to it, but that is an issue that's come up with my neighbors. And I agree. And I think some of them are also on the hook right now for tax assessments that are being.
So when you're talking to people, are they, like percentage-wise, how many people are for or against?
Oh, gosh, 75 are for.
Okay. So
but they are
please make me pay more taxes.
No, they're not please make me pay more taxes. They're please help me fix the street in front of my house without getting a $1,700 or an $1,800 bill.
Okay. So, and I know you're not on city council, so, you can pass the buck a little bit. But Green Bay's property taxes are higher than the surrounding communities already. Mm-hmm. So what do you say to a homeowner when okay, why can't we fix your road? Why do you have to pay this assessment when your property taxes are already so high?
Well, I can tell you what I know. Like you said, I am not on city council, but I'm a fiscal hawk. And there's been a lot of changes in Green Bay over the years, both with technology, with moving into new directions in various areas. And the one thing that I would like to see is what have we done to make sure we're upskilling our workforce, make sure that we are optimizing the people that we have down at City Hall, that people are happy in their jobs and they're appropriately trained. And then we can move the city forward, but we have to make sure we're doing the right things, and so that leadership has to come from the council.
So you're not on council right now. You said you're a fiscal hawk. So what does that mean?
What does that mean? When I was at Humana, I managed a $170 million budget. I was operations, so I had all the operations in the back. I know what it means to go line through budget. If you want to hide something, I know where to find it. I've had some of the best accountants that have taught me that. I've been in conversations with some people with the city on the current budget, but I'm a person that truly believes that 8% of it is the process and 20% are the people. So what is the process that we go through to make sure that our budgets, that we are going through those budgets and making sure every single thing makes sense? But on top of making sure everything makes sense is, guess what? You promised me X in 2016, so we invested in X. Show me the savings. Show me where my return on investment is. And I think holding people accountable for the work that, is being passed and the things that are being done and making sure that they do get done can change things.
So that sort of segues into these development projects that we've had. So we've had the Northland, the Bullfrogs complex called the Shipyard, and the Colburn Pool. There's been lots of discussion about that. When you're talking about, I'm going to come back 5 years from now and I'm going to say, okay, did this pay off? What do you think about the Northland? Are you planning on coming back and saying, okay, we didn't get our money's worth, and then what?
Well, then I guess we look at what did we do wrong. And I'm a firm believer in when a project is done or a project is getting close, what's working, what's not working, and what would you change? And you got to be able to make those plans sometimes on the fly. But you got to understand what you're getting into. As far as the Northland and any type of investment that we would go into, I'd be looking for a balance sheet. I want to know how much debt the developers are in and where is the money coming from to pay it off. As a city council person, I want to see it. I don't want to hear it. I want to see it.
So what if it does turn out to be bad, though? You can say we're going to look at it and do better, but you can't roll back the clock. And how do you apply? Like, what lessons are you looking to learn that you can even apply going forward for some of these things?
Well, what did we do right and what did we do wrong? As far as the Northland Hotel goes, that project is way behind budget, way behind on the time to come out. However, I do believe that it is going to be a gem. And the Marriott Hotel has stepped up and has said that they want to make it one of their boutique hotels. So I want to believe that that's going to be paid off. So we've gone through a lot of headaches. But I'm hoping that we'll be able to pay that off and look back on what we did right and what we did wrong. One of the skills that I bring is I've negotiated contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars before, and I know what needs to be in those contracts. And the first thing that can't be in the contract is that the city's on the hook.
So, so that does kind of come up with the Shipyard, where I think Chris, where you mentioned that the problem wasn't the Bullfrogs. The Bullfrogs were great to negotiate with, and things moved very quickly. The problem was the other property, the other parts of the property, whatever. So in terms of like a restaurant, he didn't want the city to be in the restaurant business, and so that's where a lot of the slowdown went. Are we taking on projects that are too big and complex?
Well, I think you have to find investors to take on those projects. I don't think it's necessarily for the city to invest all out in those types of things.
Well, they are. So that's the idea, that there was investors, but there was multiple investors in these pockets of this giant property.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ashwaubenon comes in and says, we can just do this one little thing, and then it's done. And so are we making it harder than we need to?
It sure seems like it. Let's just think of the first question. Why did it take 4 years?
Yeah.
What took 4 years? Because I know I would have dropped that contract a long time ago. I wouldn't have been.
If you were the Bullfrogs.
If I was the Bullfrogs, I wouldn't be at your door 4 years later.
Right.
Time is money. And you're right. We can't put the city on the hook for, multi millions of dollars. Because that's the city's tax. That's our tax dollars. Mm-hmm. The dollars that we pay to the city every day. Or every year on our taxes. And those things need to be spent on our fire and our police and our infrastructure. So I think we have to look at those, and those investors that come up, we need to make sure that they're going to be able to hold up their end of the bargain.
So you see what I mean by this, though? Like we have the highest property taxes of the surrounding communities, and we invest in these things, and where's the payoff?
Well, that's where the city council has to hold. That's what we have to ask. Yeah. So anything new that's coming through or anything that could be, in the works, we need to understand what the payoff is. We just eliminated some TIF districts. Why? Did we not get the payoff that we thought we were going to get? I don't know what the question to that or what the answer to that is, but we do need TIF districts where it makes sense to invest those extra dollars,
right?
And grow the business.
But shouldn't it be? So the original idea of TIF, and I've said this many times, is to fix blighted areas. So, this is the only way we can get somebody to invest, and then we say, okay, we can finance it this way and get something moving. But if it's going to take 4 years, then I don't. It seems like either way we can just like say, well, that was a one-off problem, or wait for the long term on the Northland, like it'll eventually pay off. But yet none of these things seem to be paying off. You know, we've renovated basically our entire downtown. Mm-hmm. We renovated almost all of Broadway. I don't see the payoff. Where does this happen?
The payoff from the taxpayers?
Yeah,
or...
I mean, I would like the average homeowner, the widow, the single mom. I would like her property taxes to go down, and they're not.
I would totally agree with you. And until I'm on the city council, I am really looking forward to digging into that budget and looking at what's going on. I know from a bonding perspective, we bonded 2 years ago for $700,000. Does that mean that $700 is sitting in the bank and we're paying interest on it? Because if that's the case, that doesn't make sense. And so one of the things I know, if I make it to the city council and I make it through the next or through this election, I want to understand where our projects are at. So what have we bonded for? When did we bond for it? When did we execute on it? When did we finish it? And what's still outstanding?
So you think that some of these things could just come down to accounting timing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think if people understood everything, I mean, right now you've got Coburn Pool coming up for bonding. You've got, you had mentioned a couple of them.
Well, the shipyard and the Northland has been just an ever-going kind of thing.
But for all the bonding that we're going to look at doing for development, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, does that mean we're starting a project 3 or 4 years from now? Is that what that means? I don't know. And it really woke me up to some of the council meetings that I've been attending, because as a taxpayer, I'm looking at this leg going, we bonded $700,000, and 2 years later we still haven't passed the contract. You know, that doesn't pass the smell test with me. So I'd like to know more about how that works.
So and so that kind of goes into the whole decorum of our city council, where it seems like they have, for lack of a better term, they have some communication problems, and that's without pointing the finger at anybody being having anything less than pure intentions. I assume they're all more or less there for the right reasons, but they have problems getting along, at least on camera.
Okay, I have not had that opportunity. No.
Well, I mean, so there were a few, like with the mayor and Gaizema, and there's some personality conflicts there, right? So yours is an open seat, and so what can you do going in to facilitate, a little more, collegial attitude? Is there anything you can do?
Well, I think there's things that a lot of people can do. And, being from the business world and working at Humana, I worked at a Fortune 200 company. I was a corporate officer. I've been in tough meetings. I've had to sell tough decisions. And what's really, really important is that you have the people involved and that you're educating them. When you've got big decisions that are going to go through, you need to be communicating with your peers, your alders. What are your concerns? What are the issues that you see? What can we do to get this passed? And you're working behind the scenes with people to try and move something forward. You can't just walk into a meeting and say, I'm not for this. People that are really good at moving things along plan for what the obstacles are going to be. And they try to overcome those obstacles before you even get into the meeting. Because in business, decisions are made very, very quickly. Same with, the YWCA. Decisions get made quickly, and not everybody's all on board all the time. So you got to spend your time explaining what we're doing, why we're doing it, and why it's important, and then how it's going to work for Green Bay. And I think if you spend time dialoguing and talking, you're not always going to agree with everybody. But at least you start the conversation. And, I'll give you a perfect example about that, and that is with the Oneida Nation. We've taken the service agreement away. So right now we're providing services, and there's no contract. I mean, the Oneida Nation would like to see an intergovernmental contract where the governments are working together to do something great. The 12th District is on the reservation. And we need to take, we need to get people working together and talking. When I talk to people about what the Oneida Nation is doing and what the city of Green Bay is doing, it's like this. It's like talking to, the city and the Oneida Nation are not talking to each other. And part of the reason they're not talking to each other is because, the city wants to contest all the property that goes into how am I
Into the
forgetting?
trust?
Into the trust.
Yeah,
So
okay.
they want to be able to dispute.
Yeah.
That law was passed back in the 30s, back in the 1860s.
Right.
You know what? I don't want to argue whether or not the land can go into trust. What I want to talk about is how do we maintain our property values? How do we make sure that we have standard coding or code enforcement across our district? And how do we work together? Because we can't continue to work against each other. The Oneida Nation wants to come to the table. City of Green Bay talks about wanting to come to the table. If I am elected, I'm going to bring as many people as we can to come to the table to talk about the issues in the 12th district so that we make sure that our property values stay where they are, our taxes do not go up. And I think the energy between the 12th district and the Oneida Nation, we could do some really cool stuff.
Okay, so, but what is that, ultimately, what does that mean to, somebody who's not in our district, for instance? They're not on the reservation. So, I hear you say that, and I think I would have a hard time articulating exactly what we have to lose, maybe.
By not going back?
Yeah,
By not coming back to the table?
Yeah.
What do we have to lose? We, all the other communities around us, except Hobart, so Outagamie, the Oneida Nation, Ashwaubenon, Brown County, all have agreements on safety issues, on zoning issues, and how they're going to handle issues when it comes up in relation to the Oneida tribe. We do not have that agreement.
Like what they pay us for services?
Well, not only that they pay us for services, but there's agreement on, who's doing snow plowing and policing and fire. And years ago, those people talked to each other. So, our inspectors talked to the inspectors at the Oneida Nation, and the police, there was an agreement in place. Right now, that doesn't exist. And because there is a separate police out there, and there are separate services that they provide, we're fools because we talk about wanting to decrease our tax base. Mm-hmm. We could work with the Oneida Nation and make that happen. So for me, the Oneida Nation was paying us through a service agreement. Mm-hmm. So we've lost now well over $1 million on that.
So we're not collecting on that now?
No, we are not collecting on that. We haven't been collecting on that in 3 years, and we've not been collecting because we wanted to reserve the right to contest land going into trust.
Okay, so I totally misunderstood that. I thought that it was just kind of like continuing the old agreement, so to speak.
No, that agreement is not in place, and that's why people are really upset because we're not collecting the money, we're not bringing the taxpayers together, and a showstopper. And I talked to some of the tribal leadership about this just today. The showstopper is contesting land going into trust. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe it's in the interest of the city to go to court on something that was settled back in the 1860s, 1930s, and again in 1988.
Right. Okay. So we're kind of out of time. They're giving me the kill me signal. So anything that we didn't talk about that you'd like to throw in there?
The only thing that I would say is being elected, our biggest job is to make sure that people are safe and that we've got, we're keeping our neighborhoods safe and that we're making sure that the taxes that our residents are paying are being used wisely. And that's what I want to do. I want to make sure that the tax base stays where it's at, but also that we look for ways to optimize the money already being paid in.
And so I had Bill Galvin on, and he said, nope, I looked at everything. There's not an ounce of fat. Mm-hmm. And you think you can find some?
Let's put it this way. When I was at Humana process, 80% of the problems are process problems, 20% are people problems. And if you look at a process from beginning to end, I can guarantee you will find disconnects. And if you can find a way to connect that process, make it more efficient, you will easily build in efficiency, savings, and better service for our city residents.
Well, okay. So when you find some of these, you need to come here and we're going to talk about it.
Absolutely. And you know what? Tom Hintz did that.
Yeah.
Tom Hintz, I give him a lot of credit when he was county executive. He had a lot of teams that he worked with on increase in equality and increase in, reducing inefficiency.
Yeah.
And they did a lot of awesome work, especially in the fraud area. And I don't know that we've tried that in the city. And I just think there's low-hanging fruit. Absolutely. Just from my experience, there's got to be a lot of low-hanging fruit.
Well, at the very least, we'll have some fresh eyes this time, guaranteed. Right?
Well, let's hope so.
Right. Well, I mean, we for sure will, because you're in a seat that's not being, there's no incumbent.
Well, there's no incumbent. However, the person running against me has been. So if you want change, then I'm the one to vote
That's
for.
true. Okay. So again, District 12, vote what day?
April 3rd.
And if anybody has any questions for you or they would like to get in contact with you,
My information, Gmail is out there, khinkfuss@gmail. I'm out on Facebook, Kathy A. Hinkfuss, for City Council District 12.
okay.
So all my contact information is out there also. You can message me, and I look forward to talking to anybody who would like to chat.
Awesome. Okay. So if anybody wants to tell me how I went too easy on Kathy, please visit me on the Blind Partisan community group on Facebook. Please go to YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Even if you don't want to see my ugly pink-haired face, please hit the subscribe button. It helps other people find the show. And please tell other people about the show. And if you have any topics or guests that you'd like to send our way, please drop me a line. That's all I got. I'm out.